the first thing I registered was the weight of the ring on my finger. Not the ring I'd thrown at Alexander's head 3 hours before I died, but the one he'd slipped on my finger 2 years ago, the one that had felt like a promise and then slowly, inexorably, like a shackle that I was standing in the middle of our penthouse living room, the one with the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline, and he was across from me, his back to the panoramic view of Lake Michigan. His tie was loosened, his jaw tight. He was in the middle of a sentence, his voice that calm, measured tone he used when he was delivering a verdict. And I think it's best if we postpone the engagement announcement. Just for a few months, until the dust settles on this merger. The board is skittish. They need to see me focused. The memory hit me like a physical blow. The dull ache in my chest, the way my hands had trembled as I'd clutched the velvet box, the frantic, pathetic plea that had followed. But Alexander, we've been planning this for a year. My mother's already sent the invitations. In his response, cold and disinterested, as if he were discussing quarterly earnings. Then you'll have to unsend them, Amelia. It's not personal. It's just business. Only it wasn't just business. It was her. It was always her. Penelope. The quiet, efficient, just a colleague who had been slowly, meticulously, dismantling my life while Alexander was too busy being focused to notice. I didn't realize until the end, until the day I found the other phone in his study, the one with her name on it, and then I was a ghost, watching my own funeral from the corner of a cold church. But now I was here. My skin was warm. My heart was hammering. The scotch I'd had before he got home was still a sour tang on my tongue. I'm sorry. I heard myself say, and my own voice sounded strange to my ears, too quiet, trembling on the edge of what I knew was coming. The old me would have swallowed this, nodded, and cried in the bathroom later. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Leah, he said, and he had the audacity to look tired. I'm doing this for us. For our future. The optics of a lavish engagement right now aren't good. I can't be seen as distracted. Distracted. I almost laughed. He was a master of deflection. He wasn't distracted, he was ensnared. Penelope had been his assistant for 2 years. She knew his coffee order, his schedule, his favorite charity for tax write-offs. And she knew exactly how to orbit him, how to be indispensable, how to look at him with wide, adoring eyes that I had never been able to muster. I was too busy being the perfect hostess, the perfect partner for business dinners, the perfect, quiet woman who didn't make waves. I looked down at my hand, at the ring. It was a brilliant, princess-cut diamond that I'd once thought was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Now, it felt like a collar. The memory of the crash was so vivid. The rain-slicked street, the screech of tires, the blinding headlights of the truck that had run the red light while I was running away from the truth. He'd taken my car keys, taken my future, and I'd died with all of it. And he was still standing here, asking me to postpone my life to accommodate his corporate maneuvering. No, I said. He blinked. I could see the faint pull of confusion in his brow. Alexander Hale wasn't used to hearing that word. Especially not from me. Excuse me, he asked, his voice dropping an octave. I said no. The word felt like a secret key, unlocking a part of me I'd sealed away. My hand moved to the ring. It was cool and heavy, just like him. I twisted it on my finger. I won't postpone it. I'm ending all of it. He took a step forward, his brow furrowed. Leah, you're not thinking clearly. I know the pressure of the wedding planning is getting to you, but this is not how we make decisions. We're a team. Are we? I pulled the ring off. My finger felt naked, light. The skin underneath was pale and indented. Where is Penelope tonight, Alexander? His face froze for a split second. It was a fraction of a moment, so brief that the old me would have missed it. But now I was watching him like a hawk, and I saw the tiny flicker of guilt he tried to smother. She's working late. Preparing the brief for the morning meeting. Why do you ask? Does she know? I asked softly, walking slowly towards the large marble coffee table. Does she know about the postponement? What does she have to do with this? The deflection was automatic. He was good at this. That everything, I said flatly. And I set the ring down on the table. The sound of the metal on polished stone was surprisingly loud in the cavernous room. It was like a gunshot. A declaration of war. Alexander stared at the ring, then back at me. His calm composure was starting to crack. What is this, Amelia? A game? Are you testing me? No, I shook my head. I'm not testing you. I'm done. We're done. The wedding is off. The engagement is off. You can have your little assistant all to yourself. You can tell the board you're focused, or you can tell them you're in love. I don't care. You're being ridiculous, he snapped. He was trying to regain control. This was his standard maneuver. When he was cornered, he invalidated. You're having a moment of panic and you're saying things you don't mean. This is our life, Amelia. Our life together. You're throwing it away over a piece of jewelry and a paranoid thought about my assistant? It's not a paranoid thought. My voice was steady now. The shock was wearing off, and in its place was a cold, hard resolve. It's the truth. You think I'm a fool, Alexander. You think I don't see the way she looks at you, the way you talk to her when you think no one is listening. But I see everything now. I walked to the door, my heels clicking against the wood floor. I had to get out of here. The walls felt like they were closing in, the ghost of my past self lingering in every corner, silently crying. Where are you going? He demanded, his voice sharp. He was following me now, his footsteps heavy on the floor. Home, I said, my hand on the door handle. My home. Not yours. Not ours. Mine. This is your home, he said, and there was a genuine note of confusion in his voice. He genuinely didn't understand. To him, the penthouse was everything. The prestige, the address, the status. He couldn't conceive of walking away from it. No, I said, opening the door. It was just a cage with a view. I stepped into the hallway, the soft hum of the elevator the only sound. I didn't look back. I couldn't. If I looked back, I would see his face, and I would remember the man I'd thought he was, the man I'd loved. But that man was a mirage. The elevator doors slid shut, and I leaned against the cool metal wall. My hands were shaking. A wave of dizziness washed over me as the reality of what I'd just done hit. That I had just told Alexander Hale to go to hell. And then the dizziness became a sharp, searing pain behind my eyes. I blinked, and for a moment, the elevator wasn't an elevator. It was a hospital room. I could smell the antiseptic, hear the steady beep of a heart monitor. A doctor was standing over me. In the vision, he looked grim. Her heart, it just stopped. She had a massive embolism. The voice was clinical. She was getting married. That was my mother's voice, choked with tears. My baby was going to get married. The pain in my head was blinding. I squeezed my eyes shut, and when I opened them, I was back in the elevator. The numbers above the door were descending. I had only taken a few seconds, but in that moment, I'd lived a whole other ending. The ending where I walked back into that penthouse. Where I let him console me. Where I let Penelope win, because I was too afraid to fight. The elevator chimed and the doors slid open into the lobby. The doorman, a kindly older man named George, tipped his hat. Ms. Ashton, good evening. I paused, trying to get my bearings. My head was throbbing. The pain was so real, so visceral. But I was alive. I was here. George, I said, my voice hoarse. Can you call me a cab? Of course, Ms. Ashton. He studied my face, his expression turning to one of concern. Are you all right, ma'am? You look a bit pale. I'm fine, I said, but the words felt hollow. I had just broken up with my fiancé. I had just glimpsed my own death. I was fine was a monumental lie. I'll get you a car, he said quietly, moving to the curb. I pulled out my phone. The screen was a chaotic mosaic of notifications. Missed calls from my mother. A text from my best friend, Chloe. How'd the talk go? Are you finally free, Chloe? She was the only one who knew. The only one who had seen the cracks, who had tried to warn me. I had ignored her. My phone buzzed in my hand. The name on the screen made my skin crawl. Alexander. I declined the call. Then I declined the next one. By the third, the cab had arrived. I got in, gave the driver Chloe's address, and sat back in the seat, my mind churning. I was alive. I had time. I had a future that was still unwritten. Penelope had orchestrated the crash. I knew it now. She'd been in the other car, the one that had run the red light. She hadn't just wanted the man, she'd wanted my life. She'd wanted it all. And she'd gotten it, in the end. The old Will was found. He'd been so broken up, so inconsolable, that he'd simply had to find comfort in his assistant. Now, I had the chance to make sure she never had that chance again. But as the cab pulled away from the curb, a new thought slithered into my mind, colder and more terrifying than anything I'd felt in my first life. If Penelope had been willing to kill me once, what would she do when she found out I was still standing in her way? The ring was on the table. The truth was out. And somewhere in this city, a woman who had already proven she was capable of murder was about to realize her perfect plan had just fallen apart. I watched the penthouse shrink in the rearview mirror, and I knew with absolute certainty that this wasn't the end. This was only the beginning. Chloe's apartment was in a part of the city that Alexander would have called quaint with a sneer. It was small, messy, and smelled like her lavender candles and the pizza she'd probably had for dinner. It was perfect. You look like you just saw a ghost, she said, ushering me inside. Or better yet, you look like you just showed him the door. I did, I said, sinking onto her worn-out couch. The fabric was soft, and I felt the tension in my shoulders start to ease. I gave the ring back. I told him it was over. Chloe's face broke into a triumphant grin. Finally. Thank God. I was starting to think I'd have to stage an intervention and get him to do something really unforgivable, like leave the toilet seat up. Wait, he does that anyway. What did he say? I took a deep breath. He tried to gaslight me. He said I was having a panic attack and that the pressure of the wedding was making me irrational. Of course he did, she snorted, pouring me a glass of wine. He's a classic narcissist. His go-to move is denial. So, what now? Are you moving back here? We can take the spare room. Or, just the other side of the bed. Mine's a queen. I don't know, I admitted, accepting the glass. The red liquid was a comfort. I don't have any plans yet. My life was entirely scripted. From the engagement to the merger to the honeymoon in the Maldives. He had everything planned out for the next 5 years. Well, now you get to write your own script, she said, sitting down next to me. She looked at me, her expression turning serious. I have to ask, Leah. It seems sudden. You were so in love with him. What changed? How could I explain this? I had lived a whole life that ended with me dying. That didn't happen yet. In her timeline, I was a woman who just had a fight with her fiancé. I couldn't tell her I'd been reborn. She'd think I'd finally snapped it. I opened my eyes, I said finally. I saw him for what he was. A man who only cares about himself and his image. He's been cheating on me, Chloe. With his assistant, Penelope. Chloe gasped. That mousy little thing with the permanent pout. Oh, you're kidding. That's so cliché. It gets worse, I said. I think she's dangerous. She's not just sleeping with him. She's obsessed. She orchestrated little things. She'd leak information so I'd look bad. She'd whisper things in his ear, just to make me seem paranoid. She sounds like a sociopath, Chloe said, shaking her head. Well, good riddance to both of them. You're a catch, Amelia. You're brilliant, you're kind, and you have way better taste in shoes than him. She paused, grabbing my hand. But we need to make sure he doesn't come after you. He's not the type to just let go. I know. I looked at my phone, which was still silent. He hadn't called after the 3 tries. That was interesting. The old Alexander would have been relentless. The fact that he'd stopped meant he was either plotting, or he was already on the phone with Penelope, filling her in on the situation. Probably the latter. I took a sip of wine, feeling the warmth spread through my chest. I need to get my things from the penthouse. But I can't go back there alone. I'll go with you, Chloe said immediately. We can go tomorrow morning. He'll be at work. I'll bring the taser just in case, though. I laughed. It was a rusty sound, like it had been locked away for a long time. God, I missed you. You missed me. I'm the best friend. I'm the one who was stuck here eating pizza alone while you were hobnobbing with Chicago's elite. I leaned my head on her shoulder. I know. I'm sorry. Don't be. She squeezed my hand. We're going to get through this. We're going to get you on your feet, and you're going to be fabulous. We'll start with your outfits. I call dibs on that dress that you wore to the museum gala last month. It's yours, I said, closing my eyes. Take it all. The night passed in a haze of wine and whispered girl talk. I told Chloe everything about the affair, the casual cruelties, the way Alexander made me feel small. I didn't tell her about the crash. That secret was mine to carry for now. At some point, I fell asleep on the couch, the ghost of the hospital room fading with every new memory I was creating in this new life. The next morning, I felt different. It wasn't a magical transformation, but it was a shift. I felt like I was seeing the world in color for the first time in years. We grabbed coffee on the way to the penthouse, and I felt a sense of defiance with every step. The doorman, George, was there again. Miss Ashton, he said, a little surprised. I didn't expect to see you this morning. He looked at the duffel bag in my hand. Are you moving out? I am, I said, my voice firm. I'm done here. He didn't ask questions, just nodded his head, a flicker of what looked like approval in his eyes. It was the first time I'd felt supported by a stranger. The elevator ride to the top floor was tense. Chloe was beside me, her taser in her purse. We stepped out into the hallway, and I inserted my key into the lock. The penthouse was silent. Alexander was gone. I let out a breath. I didn't know I was holding that. All right, I said to Chloe. Let's do this quickly. My room is down the hall. Grab the clothes, the jewelry, the books. Everything else can burn. We worked in tandem. I was methodical, but I was also watchful. I noticed things I'd missed before. The faint scent of Penelope's perfume in the guest bedroom. A strand of her hair on the pillow. It was a slap in the face, a tangible proof of the deception. When I walked into the study to grab a few of my business books, I saw the landline phone. It had a red light blinking, indicating a voicemail. On a whim, I hit the play button. There was a brief pause, and then I heard a voice that made my blood run cold. Alexander. It was Penelope. Her voice was light, lilting, dripping with faux concern. I just wanted to check in. I heard the news about Leah. I can't believe she would do that to you. She always was so volatile. I'm just glad you have me. I'll be waiting at the office. You know I always am. I stared at the machine. She was already spinning the narrative. I was the unstable one, the one who had walked out. She was the saintly martyr. Chloe appeared in the doorway. Leah, I found this. She was holding a framed photo of the two of us at a charity event. He left it face down in the closet. What an asshole. I looked at the phone, then at the photo, and then at the ring I'd left on the coffee table. It was still there, glinting in the morning sun like a taunt. I walked to the table and picked it up. It was a beautiful ring. It belonged on a beautiful hand that deserved a beautiful life. It didn't belong to him, and it no longer belonged to me. What are you going to do with it? Chloe asked. I smiled. It was a cold, calculated smile. I'm not going to sell it. I'm going to use it. I grabbed my phone and typed out a message to Alexander. I'm picking up the rest of my things. Don't come home. The ring is on the table. I'm taking the painting from the hall and the silverware. I'm also taking the truth. You can keep the lies. That I hit send. Then I looked at Chloe. We need to go. We have a lot of work to do. Work? Chloe asked, her brow furrowing. What kind of work? I'm going to ruin him, I said, and the words felt like a promise. I'm going to take everything he's built and I'm going to hand it to the people he's wronged. Starting with Penelope. She's going to learn that you don't get to stand on the graves of others to build your own happiness. Chloe's eyes widened, but there was a fire in them that matched my own. Okay. Tell me what to do. I looked around the penthouse. This was my old life. It was a museum of lies. But I was going to burn it down and build something from the ashes. As we loaded the last of my bags into Chloe's car, my phone buzzed. I expected it to be Alexander, finally responding with fury or desperation. But it wasn't. That it was a text from an unknown number. You think you're so clever, Amelia. But you don't know what you've started. I've been watching you for a long time. I know everything about you. Your routines. Your weaknesses. Your friends. Enjoy your little victory while it lasts. It won't last long. That I stared at the screen, my heart hammering against my ribs. Chloe leaned over and read it over my shoulder. What the hell? She whispered. Who is that? I didn't answer. Because I already knew. It wasn't Alexander. It wasn't even Penelope, not directly. The phrasing was too cold, too deliberate. This was someone who had been watching from the shadows, someone who had been waiting for the moment to strike. That I looked up at the penthouse, at the glass and steel monolith that had once been my entire world. And for the first time, I realized that walking away wasn't enough. That I had to fight. That the first thing I did was call my lawyer. Not the one Alexander had recommended. That man worked for him. I found a different one, a woman named Sasha who specialized in corporate law and had a reputation for being a shark. I told her I was terminating the partnership and needed to protect my assets. You're making a smart move, Sasha said over the phone. I've seen the prenup. It's draconian. But you have leverage. You have information. And, if what you're telling me is true, you have a company that relies on your public image. I have more than that, I said. I have a whistleblower. I didn't have one yet, but I knew where to find one. Penelope wasn't the only person Alexander kept on his payroll. There was a junior accountant named Mark who had stumbled upon some irregularities in the books a few months ago. He'd tried to bring it to Alexander's attention, and he'd been threatened with termination. I had witnessed the conversation. I had seen the fear in the man's eyes. I hadn't said anything then. I'd been too scared to get involved. I was no longer scared. That I spent the rest of the week rebuilding my life. I moved into a small, clean apartment in River North, far from Alexander's world of glass and steel. I met with Mark, and after a long conversation over bad coffee, I promised him protection and a healthy severance if he helped me expose the company's financial misdeeds. He agreed. That the plan was coming together. The board was nervous. Alexander was getting frantic. His calls went from being condescending to desperate. Clea, you need to stop this, he said during our first real conversation in a week. I had blocked his number, but he'd called from the office line. Mark is lying. He's been stealing from the company. I have proof. No, you don't, I said calmly. Because he didn't steal anything. You did. You and your board, and your little assistant who's been cooking the books for a year. You were padding expense reports to fund an offshore account that Penelope set up in her own name. I've seen the files. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. You're bluffing, he said finally, but his voice was thin. I'm not, I said. I have copies. I have enough to put you in prison. But I'm not going to do that, Alexander. I'm not going to be your jailer. I'm going to be your undoing. What do you want? He asked. Money, a settlement. Name your price. I want what I've always wanted, Alexander, I said softly. I wanted you to be the man I thought you were. But you're not. So now, I just want you to be gone. I want the engagement to be officially over, in the papers, in the eyes of the law, in the eyes of your board. I want you to acknowledge that you were having an affair with your assistant and that you tried to defraud your company. And then, I want you to get therapy. Because you need it. He laughed, a bitter, broken sound. You're insane. You're a vengeful, jealous woman. This is going to destroy you. No, I said. It's going to build me. I hung up the phone. It was the most liberating conversation I'd ever had. A week later, the newspapers ran the story. Hale Industries CEO in financial scandal, engagement called off. My face was on the cover of one of the gossip rags, but I didn't care. I was free. And the best part was, Penelope's involvement was revealed. She was named as a co-conspirator. Her career was over. I had won. But the victory felt hollow. I didn't want revenge, I wanted peace. I was sitting in my new apartment, sipping tea, when Chloe came in with a bottle of champagne. We're celebrating, she announced. You're officially a free woman. I suppose, I said, but I couldn't bring myself to smile. What's wrong, she asked, her face falling. You did it. You ruined him. You got the justice you wanted. I didn't want justice, I said, finally looking at her. I wanted him to be different. I wanted to be different. But the moment the dust settles, I just feel empty. I built my entire life around him. And now, I'm just here. Starting over. That's not a bad thing, Chloe said gently. You get to rebuild. You get to decide who you want to be. I nodded. She was right. The revenge was just the first step. The real journey was what came next. The days turned into weeks. I started a charity foundation, focusing on helping young women escape abusive relationships and rebuild their careers. It felt right. It felt like purpose. And then, one afternoon, I got an invitation in the mail. It was an art gallery opening, a small thing for a local artist. The card was plain but elegant, and written in a neat, elegant hand was a message: I'd love to see you there. The signature was a name I didn't recognize. James. I didn't know who James was, but something about the invitation felt different. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a plea. It was just a simple invitation. A new beginning. I looked at the invitation for a long time, and then I smiled. The future wasn't about revenge, and it wasn't about him. It was about me. I was ready to write the next chapter. I put on my favorite dress and called Chloe. I'm going to an art gallery. You want to come to an art gallery? She said. That sounds way too pretentious for me. But I'm proud of you. I laughed. I'll bring you a souvenir. I hung up the phone, grabbed my keys, and walked out the door. The sky was a brilliant blue, and the city felt full of possibility. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, I was excited to find out that the gallery was tucked away in a quiet corner of the West Loop, a converted warehouse with exposed brick and track lighting that cast a warm glow over the artwork on display. The artist was a woman named Elena, and her paintings were a riot of color and emotion, bold strokes of crimson and gold that felt like she was painting with her soul. I wandered through the space, sipping a glass of Prosecco and letting the energy of the art wash over me. It was strange, being in a crowd again. The old me would have been performing, smiling, making small talk with the right people, all while keeping an eye on Alexander to make sure he wasn't embarrassing me. The new me was just there. Present. Without a script. I wasn't sure you'd come. The voice came from behind me, and it was warm, with a touch of amusement. I turned to face a tall man with dark hair and kind brown eyes. He was wearing a simple gray suit with no tie, and he had the kind of steady, grounded presence that made you feel like you could breathe easier in his company. James, I asked, raising an eyebrow. He smiled, and it transformed his face. Yes. I'm sorry, I know this is forward. I saw your name on the donor list for the foundation, and I thought you might appreciate a change of scenery. My sister is the artist. I looked around at the vibrant paintings, then back at him. His eyes were sincere, unguarded. There was no calculation in them, no agenda. That your sister is incredibly talented. I said that. Elena would love to hear you say that, he said, his smile widening. She thinks no one gets her work. From what I can see, you have to be a little misunderstood to paint like that, I said. That he laughed, a genuine, warm laugh that made me want to know more. You're good. You can read a person from their art. I can read a person from their invitation, I countered. It's a dying art. We talked for the rest of the evening. It was easy, effortless, like we were old friends catching up. He was a professor of literature at Northwestern, he told me. He loved poetry, hated pretentious people, and thought the world would be a better place if everyone read more books. And what about you? He asked as we stood in front of Elena's centerpiece, a massive canvas of a woman rising from a sea of blue, her arms reaching for a sky that was on fire. What do you want, Amelia? The question caught me off guard. No one had ever asked me that before. I'd always known what I wanted: marriage, stability, love. But those things had been tied to Alexander. Now, I didn't know what I wanted for myself. That I want to make a difference, I said slowly. I want to help people who are stuck, who feel like they have no way out. And I want to be happy. Just happy. That's a good answer, he said, his voice soft. You know, Elena's paintings are all about rebirth. She says everyone deserves a second chance. A chance to rise from the wreckage. I looked at the painting again, and something inside me shifted. It was like the universe was trying to tell me something. That I think I'm finally ready for that, I said. James drove me home that night, and we talked until the car pulled up to my apartment. There was no pressure, no urgency. Just a sense of quiet companionship that felt like the most precious thing in the world. I'd like to see you again, he said, and there was a nervousness in his voice that I found endearing. If you're open to it. I'd like that, I said. That I walked into my apartment with a lightness I hadn't felt in years. For the first time in my life, I was excited about the future. But as I was getting ready for bed, my phone buzzed with a message that shattered the peace. That it was an anonymous number. You think you've won? You've just made things worse for yourself. Watch your back, Amelia. That I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. The message was unhinged, a blatant threat. It was Penelope. It had to be. I didn't reply. I deleted the message and blocked the number, but the fear lingered. I wasn't the same frightened woman who had died in that crash, but knowing Penelope was still out there, still unstable, was a chilling reminder that the past wasn't done with me yet. That I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to let her win. I wasn't going to live in fear. I was going to fight back, not with revenge, but with something stronger. I was going to build a life so full, so bright, that her threats would become meaningless. Tomorrow, I told myself. Tomorrow, I start living for real. The threats continued for weeks. Every few days, a new message would appear on my phone from a different burner number. They were cryptic, unsettling, filled with phrases like, "You can't hide from what's coming," and "You should have stayed in your lane." At first, I assumed it was Penelope, trying to intimidate me. But then I started to notice something else. The messages were coming from different parts of the city. Sometimes from a payphone in the suburbs. Sometimes from a number traced back to a coffee shop near the art gallery where I'd met James. Whoever it was, they were following me. They knew my routines. I tried to ignore them. I threw myself into the foundation, pouring all my energy into the work. We were setting up our first safe house, a small brownstone in Edgewater that would provide temporary housing for women fleeing abusive relationships. I spent my days meeting with contractors, interviewing potential staff, and raising funds from local donors. It was exhausting, but it was also the most alive I'd felt in years. James became a constant presence in my life. We had dinner twice a week, went for long walks along the lakefront on weekends, and spent lazy Sunday afternoons in his apartment, reading side by side. He was gentle and patient, never pushing me to talk about the things I wasn't ready to share. But I could see the questions in his eyes, the quiet concern that I was still carrying something heavy. "You seem distracted," he said one evening as we sat on his rooftop deck, watching the sun sink over the city. The sky was a blaze of orange and pink, and the cool breeze carried the scent of the lake. I'm sorry, I said, forcing a smile. There's just a lot going on with the foundation. We're almost ready to open the safe house, and I'm nervous about getting everything right. He nodded, but I could tell he didn't fully believe me. You're doing something important, Amelia. You should be proud of yourself. Not many people would take a painful experience and turn it into something that helps others. I looked at him, at the genuine warmth in his eyes, and I felt a surge of emotion that I couldn't quite name. I don't think I could have done it without you, I admitted. You've been steady. You make me feel like I can breathe. He reached over and took my hand. That's all I want. For you to feel safe. For you to feel like you can be yourself. I squeezed his hand, and for a moment, I let myself believe that everything was going to be okay. But the threats didn't stop. And then, the first incident happened. It was a Thursday afternoon, and I was leaving the Foundation's office after a long day of meetings. The safe house was finally ready, and we were planning the opening ceremony for the following weekend. I was exhausted but exhilarated, already mentally drafting the speech I would give to the donors and community leaders. I walked out of the building and started toward the L station, my heels clicking against the pavement. The street was quiet, lined with old brick buildings and a few small shops. I was halfway down the block when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, expecting to see another commuter, but the street was empty. I shrugged it off and kept walking. A few seconds later, I heard it again. Faster this time. Closer. I spun around, my heart racing. A figure in a black hoodie was standing about 20 feet away, their face obscured by the shadow of the hood. They weren't moving, just standing there, watching me. Can I help you? I called out, my voice sharper than I intended. The figure didn't respond. They just stood there, perfectly still, like a statue. I took a step back, my hand fumbling in my purse for my phone. I'm calling the police, I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. The figure turned and walked away, disappearing around a corner. I stood there for a long moment, my heart pounding, before I realized I had been holding my breath. I exhaled shakily, pulled out my phone, and called Chloe. Someone was following me, I said, my voice trembling. I'm scared, Chloe. I don't know what to do. Where are you? She demanded. I'm coming to get you. Don't move. She arrived within 15 minutes, her car screeching to a halt at the curb. I climbed in, and she drove me straight to the police station. The officer I spoke to was a tired-looking woman named Detective Marquez. She listened to my story, took down the details, and nodded sympathetically. We can file a report, she said. But without a clear description or any evidence, there's not much we can do. I'll make a note of it, and we'll increase patrols in the area. In the meantime, I'd recommend varying your routine. Don't take the same route home every day. And if you feel like you're being followed, go to a public place and call us. It wasn't the answer I wanted, but it was the one I got. That's it, Chloe asked, her voice sharp with frustration. She's being stalked, and you're telling her to take a different route home. I'm telling her the reality of the situation, Detective Marquez said calmly. Unless we have more to go on, there's only so much we can do. Miss Ashton, if you receive any more threats, keep a record of them. The more evidence we have, the better. I nodded, feeling a strange mix of gratitude and defeat. Thank you, Detective. Chloe drove me home in silence. When we got to my apartment, she followed me inside and made me sit down. This is getting serious, she said, pacing in front of me. You can't just ignore it. Whoever this is, they're escalating. First the texts, now this. What's next I don't know, I admitted. But I can't let it control my life. I have the foundation opening next weekend. I have to be there. I can't let her, whoever she is, stop me from living. Chloe stopped pacing. You think it's Penelope? I don't know who else it would be, I said. She's the one with the motive. She lost everything because of me. Her job, her reputation, Alexander. She has nothing left to lose. Then we need to do something, Chloe insisted. We can't just wait for her to make the next move. I thought about it. She was right. I couldn't keep living in fear, constantly looking over my shoulder. I needed to take control. Okay, I said finally. Let's find out where she is. Let's see what she's been up to. Chloe nodded, a determined glint in her eye. I know a guy. He's a private investigator. He's helped me with a few things before. He's discreet. The next day, I met with the private investigator, a gruff man named Frank who looked like he'd stepped out of a noir film. He had a permanent 5 o'clock shadow and a tendency to speak in short, clipped sentences. I gave him Penelope's name and whatever information I had on her, and he promised to get back to me within a week. One more thing, I said as he was packing up his notepad. Can you look into someone else, a junior accountant named Mark? He helped me with something a while back, and I want to make sure he's okay. He might be in danger too. Frank nodded and jotted down the name. I'll see what I can find. The week leading up to the foundation opening was a blur of activity. There were final walkthroughs, last-minute donations, and 100 small details that needed to be addressed. I threw myself into the work, using it as a distraction from the lingering fear that simmered beneath the surface. James helped as much as he could. He came to the safe house on a Saturday morning to help me hang artwork in the common room. The space was warm and inviting, filled with soft furniture and warm lighting. It was designed to feel like a home, not an institution. This is incredible, James said, stepping back to admire the painting we'd just hung. It was a serene landscape, a quiet forest scene that I'd chosen for its calming effect. You've thought of everything. I hope so, I said. These women are going to be starting over from nothing. I want them to feel like they have a chance. Like they're not alone. He turned to look at me, his expression soft. You're amazing. You know that you take all this pain and you turn it into something beautiful. I felt a blush creep up my cheeks. I had help. You've been a big part of this, James. I don't think I could have done it without your encouragement. He stepped closer, his hand finding mine. I'm not going anywhere, Amelia. Whatever you need, I'm here. I looked into his eyes, and I felt something shift inside me. The fear was still there, the lingering dread of the unknown, but it was quieter now. James had a way of making everything feel manageable, like the weight I was carrying wasn't quite so heavy. Thank you, I said softly. For everything. The morning of the foundation opening arrived, and I woke up feeling a strange mix of excitement and anxiety. I had been working toward this moment for months, and now it was finally here. I put on a simple black dress and a pair of heels, spending extra time on my hair and makeup. I wanted to look confident, put together, like the woman I was trying to become. Chloe arrived at my apartment with a bouquet of flowers and a bottle of champagne. You're going to be amazing, she said, handing me the bouquet. Everyone is going to love you. And if they don't, I'll personally escort them out. I laughed, the first genuine laugh I'd had in days. You're the best, you know that. I know, she said with a grin. Now let's go. The world is waiting for you. The opening ceremony was held at the safe house. We had invited local politicians, community leaders, and representatives from other nonprofit organizations. The sun was shining, and the small backyard had been transformed with white folding chairs and a podium draped in blue fabric. I stood at the back of the crowd, watching the attendees mingle and chat. My heart was pounding, but I felt a sense of calm settle over me. This was my moment. I had built something from nothing, and I was proud of it. James appeared at my side, his hand finding mine. You ready? I took a deep breath. Ready. I walked up to the podium, and the crowd quieted. I looked out at the faces before me, friends, strangers, people who had believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And for a moment, the fear melted away. Thank you all for being here, I began. A few months ago, I was at the lowest point in my life. I had lost everything, or at least, everything I thought mattered. My relationship, my sense of identity, my future. I felt like I was drowning. I paused, letting my words sink in. But I was wrong about one thing. I hadn't lost everything. I had lost the things that were holding me back. And in that loss, I found my strength. I found my purpose. I gestured to the house behind me. This safe house is for women who have been through similar struggles. Women who have been told they're not enough. Women who have been made to feel small and powerless. I want them to know that they are not alone. I want them to know that there is a way forward. The crowd applauded, and I felt a warmth spread through my chest. This was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for. I finished my speech, mingled with the attendees, and felt a sense of accomplishment I hadn't felt in years. But as the afternoon wore on, a nagging feeling crept back into my thoughts. Where was Penelope? Frank had said he would have something for me by now, but I hadn't heard from him. I excused myself and stepped inside the safe house to check my phone. There were a few missed calls from a number I didn't recognize. I called back, and Frank answered on the first ring. "Miss Ashton," he said, his voice gravelly. "I have some information for you. It's not what you're going to want to hear." "What do you mean?" I asked, my heart dropping. "Penelope Ellis is no longer in Chicago. She left town about 3 weeks ago. I traced her to a small town in upstate New York. She's been staying with a relative there." I frowned. "That doesn't make sense. She's been threatening me. She's been following me." Frank was quiet for a moment. "I'm not saying she's not involved, Ms. Ashton. But the evidence suggests that she's not the one sending those messages. The phone numbers you gave me. They're all registered to a different person." "Who?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "That's the thing," he said slowly. "The name on the registration is Alexander Hale." I felt the world tilt beneath me. Alexander, he was the one threatening me. It didn't make sense. He had everything to lose. Why would he risk it? "Are you sure?" I asked. "I'm sure," Frank said. I triple-checked it. He's been using burner phones and prepaid cards, but he slipped up on one of them. He used his personal credit card to buy one of the phones. I traced it back to him. I stood in the quiet of the safe house, my mind racing. Alexander had been the one behind the threats. He had been the one following me. But why? What did he want? "Thank you, Frank," I said finally. "I need to think about this." "Miss Ashton," Frank said before I could hang up. "There's one more thing. The threats, they started the day after you took the ring. He's not trying to scare you. He's trying to get you to come back." I hung up the phone and stared at the wall. Alexander. He was the one who had been haunting me all along. The realization hit me like a wave, and I felt a strange mix of anger and pity. He wasn't trying to destroy me. He was trying to control me, just like he always had. The threats were just another way of pulling the strings. I walked back outside, my mind still reeling. The party was winding down, and people were beginning to filter out. James was waiting for me by the steps, his face brightening when he saw me. "Is everything okay?" he asked, noticing my expression. I hesitated. I could lie to him, protect him from the truth. But I was tired of lying. I was tired of carrying the weight alone. "Can we talk?" I asked. Somewhere private, he led me to a quiet corner of the garden, and I told him everything. About Alexander, about the threats, about the investigation. About the rebirth. I couldn't explain. When I finished, he was silent for a long moment. Then he pulled me into his arms. "Amelia, I don't understand everything you just told me," he said softly. "But I believe you. And I'm not going anywhere." I looked up at him, tears streaming down my face. What if he doesn't stop? What if he keeps coming after me? "Then we'll face it together," he said firmly. "We'll file a restraining order. We'll hire security. Whatever it takes. But you're not going to let him win, Amelia. Not again." I nodded, feeling a sense of resolve settle over me. He was right. I had come too far to let Alexander drag me back down. I had built something beautiful, something meaningful, and I wasn't going to let him destroy it. The next day, I went to the police station with a folder of evidence. I filed a restraining order against Alexander and gave them the information Frank had uncovered. Detective Marquez looked over the documents, her eyebrows rising. This is substantial. We'll bring him in for questioning. It wasn't the instant justice I'd hoped for, but it was a start. And for the first time in months, I felt like I was truly taking back control. That night, I sat in my apartment and looked out the window at the city lights. The fear was still there, a constant hum beneath the surface. But it was quieter now. Manageable. My phone buzzed, and I tensed. But it wasn't a threat this time. It was a message from James. You were amazing today. I'm so proud of you. Good night, Amelia. That I smiled, a real smile that reached my eyes. I had survived. I had rebuilt. And I had found someone who saw me, truly saw me, and loved me anyway. The future was still uncertain. But for the first time, I was ready to meet it head on. The week after the restraining order was filed felt like the calm before a storm. I went through the motions of my life, meetings at the foundation, dinners with James, lazy evenings with Chloe, but beneath the surface, I was coiled tight as a spring. Every notification on my phone made my heart jump. Every shadow on the street made me turn my head. Alexander had gone quiet since the police had picked him up for questioning, but I knew better than to believe he was done. Detective Marquez called me 3 days after I filed the paperwork. We brought him in. He denied everything, of course. Said he had no idea who was sending those messages, that someone must have framed him. We don't have enough to hold him, but the restraining order is in place. If he comes within 500 feet of you, he goes to jail. And the phones, I asked. The burner phones purchased with his credit card. He claims his wallet was stolen a few months ago. Says anyone could have used his card. Her voice was flat, unimpressed. It's a weak story, but without more evidence, we can't prove it's him. I'm sorry, Ms. Ashton. I know that's not what you wanted to hear. It wasn't. But it was what I'd expected. Alexander was a master of manipulation. Of course he had a story ready. Of course he'd covered his tracks. Thank you for trying, detective, I said. Keep documenting everything, she reminded me. And if he so much as breathes in your direction, call us immediately. I hung up and sat in silence for a long moment. The fear I'd been holding at bay crept back in, insidious and cold. He was out there. He knew where I lived, where I worked, where I spent my time. And he'd already proven he was willing to play dirty. That afternoon, I met Frank at a coffee shop near the foundation. He slid into the booth across from me, his usual gruff demeanor intact. I've been digging deeper into Alexander's activities, he said, pulling out a thick folder. And I found something interesting. It seems he's been liquidating assets. Quietly. Selling off stocks, transferring money to offshore accounts. He's preparing for something. Preparing for what? I asked, my stomach sinking. I don't know yet, Frank admitted. But it's not the behavior of a man who's given up. He's consolidating. And he's doing it fast. I flipped through the documents he'd compiled. Bank statements, wire transfer records, property sales. It was all there, a paper trail of desperation. Alexander was bleeding money, and he was trying to hide it. Do you think he's planning to leave the country? I asked. Could be, Frank said. Or he could be planning something else. Either way, you need to be careful. A cornered animal is the most dangerous kind. I thanked him and left the coffee shop, my mind churning. Alexander was running out of options. And that made him unpredictable. The next few days passed in a haze of anxiety. I varied my routines, took different routes to work, and made sure I was never alone after dark. James noticed the tension in my shoulders, the way I flinched at sudden noises. You're not sleeping, he said one evening as we sat on his couch. He'd made me dinner, a simple pasta dish that I'd barely touched. I can see it in your eyes. I'm fine, I said automatically. It was a lie, and we both knew it. Amelia. He said my name gently, the way he always did when he was trying to reach me. I know you think you have to handle this alone. But you don't. I'm right here. I looked at him, at the concern etched into his features, and I felt the walls I'd built start to crumble. I'm scared, I admitted. I thought I was past this. I thought I'd moved on. But he's still out there, and I don't know what he's going to do. I'm not going to let anything happen to you, James said, his voice firm. We'll get through this together. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to let go of the fear and trust that everything would be okay. But the shadow of Alexander loomed too large, too dark, to be banished by a few kind words. The first real sign that Alexander wasn't done with me came on a Wednesday morning that I was at the foundation's office, reviewing the budget for the next quarter, when my assistant, a young woman named Maya, knocked on the door. Amelia, there's someone here to see you, she said, her voice uncertain. She says she's a friend of yours. Who is it? I asked, looking up from my spreadsheets. That she didn't give her name. She just said it was important. Maya hesitated. She's waiting in the lobby. She seems upset. I felt a prickle of unease. I didn't have any friends who would show up unannounced at the foundation. Chloe would have texted first. James would have called. Can you describe her? I asked. Maya thought for a moment. Early 30s. Dark hair. Very thin. She's wearing a long coat, even though it's warm out. My blood ran cold. I knew that description. It was the same one I'd been carrying in my mind since the day I'd stood on that street corner, watching her walk away. Penelope. I stood up slowly, my heart hammering in my chest. Tell her I'll be right there. Maya nodded and left. I stood in my office for a long moment, trying to steady my breathing. Penelope was supposed to be in upstate New York. Frank had confirmed it. What was she doing here? I walked to the lobby, my heels echoing in the quiet hallway. And there she was, sitting on the edge of a chair, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She looked thinner than I remembered, her cheekbones sharp and her eyes hollow. The confident, polished woman I'd known was gone. In her place was someone who looked like she'd been through a war. Amelia, she said, standing up as I entered. Her voice was ragged, stripped of its usual sickly sweet lilt. Thank you for seeing me. I know I have no right to ask for anything. What are you doing here? I asked, my voice cold. I didn't trust myself to say more. Please, she said, taking a step toward me. I know you hate me. I know I deserve it. But I need to talk to you. It's about Alexander. I crossed my arms, keeping my distance. What about him? He's been contacting me, she said, her voice trembling. He won't leave me alone. He calls me every day, sometimes multiple times. He says he needs me. He says he's going to fix everything and we're going to be together. I stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. Alexander has been calling you. I thought you two were done. We were, she said bitterly. After the scandal, he dropped me like I was nothing. He didn't return my calls. He didn't answer my texts. He made it clear that I was a liability. She paused, her expression flickering with something that looked like shame. But now that you've gotten a restraining order, he's come crawling back. He says he wants to make things right. He says he's going to get his revenge on you, and then we'll be happy. My heart dropped. Revenge? What kind of revenge? I don't know, Penelope said, shaking her head. He won't tell me the details. But he's been talking about it non-stop. He's obsessed, Amelia. He's not the same person I knew. He's unhinged. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw the fear in her eyes. It was genuine. She wasn't here to threaten me. She was here because she was scared. Why are you telling me this? I asked. You could have gone to the police. You could have ignored it. Penelope laughed, a hollow sound. I tried to go to the police. They said there was nothing they could do. He hasn't made any direct threats against me, just promises. Vague ones. And I don't have the money to hire a lawyer like you do. So you came to me, I said flatly. I came to you because I have no one else, she said, her voice breaking. I've burned every bridge I had. My family won't speak to me. My friends abandoned me. I have nothing left. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. I know I hurt you. I know what I did was unforgivable. But I'm telling you the truth now. Alexander is planning something. And I think you're the only one who can stop him. I stood there, torn between suspicion and the undeniable sincerity in her voice. She looked broken. She looked like someone who had hit rock bottom. And if she was telling the truth, then Alexander was more dangerous than I'd realized. Tell me everything, I said finally. Everything he said, every detail you can remember. She nodded, sinking back into the chair. And for the next hour, she talked. She told me about the late-night calls, the frantic ramblings, the way Alexander had become fixated on getting even with me. He blamed me for everything, the scandal, the loss of his company, the destruction of his reputation. He couldn't see that he'd brought it all on himself. That he told me he has access to your files, Penelope said, her voice barely above a whisper. He said he knows about the Foundation's financial records. He said he's going to expose something, make it look like you've been embezzling funds. I felt my stomach turn. That's a lie. The Foundation's books are clean. I've had them audited twice. I know, Penelope said. But he doesn't care about the truth. He just wants to destroy you. He wants to take away everything you've built. I stood up, my mind racing. If Alexander was planning to frame me for embezzlement, I needed to act fast. I needed to protect the Foundation, protect myself, protect everything I'd worked so hard to create. That thank you, I said to Penelope, surprising myself. I know that wasn't easy. She looked up at me, her eyes glistening. I'm not a good person, Amelia. I know that. But I never wanted this. I never wanted him to become this. I didn't know if I believed her. I didn't know if I could ever forgive her for what she'd done. But in that moment, I saw her as what she was, a woman who had been used and discarded by the same man who had tried to destroy me. That go home, I said. And stay away from Alexander. If he contacts you again, document everything and call the police. She nodded and left, her footsteps echoing in the quiet lobby. I stood there for a long moment, my mind reeling. The first thing I did was call Frank. I told him about Penelope's visit, and he promised to look into Alexander's activities. He also recommended I hire a security consultant to review the Foundation systems. Alexander had access to a lot of information when you two were together, Frank said. If he's planning something, he'll use whatever he has. You need to lock everything down. I spent the rest of the week in a state of controlled chaos. I met with a cybersecurity expert who helped me secure the Foundation's financial records. I hired a private security team to monitor the office and the safe house. I made sure every employee at the Foundation knew to report any suspicious activity. James was by my side through all of it. He came with me to the security meetings, asked questions I hadn't thought of, and held my hand when the anxiety became too much. You're handling this incredibly well, he said one evening as we sat in my apartment. Most people would have fallen apart by now. I can't afford to fall apart, I said. Too many people are counting on me. Not just them, he said softly. I'm counting on you too. I need you to stay whole. I need you to stay with me. I looked at him, and I felt a surge of gratitude so strong it almost hurt. I'm not going anywhere, I promised. Alexander is not going to win. He's not going to take anything else from me. But even as I said the words, I felt a flicker of doubt. Alexander was unpredictable. He was desperate. And desperate people did desperate things. The blow came 2 weeks later. I was in a meeting with the Foundation's board when Maya knocked on the door, her face pale. Amelia, I'm sorry to interrupt. There's someone from the police here. They need to speak with you. My heart stopped. I excused myself and walked to the lobby, where 2 officers were waiting. One of them was Detective Marquez. What's going on? I asked, my voice steady despite the fear coiling in my chest. Ms. Ashton, Detective Marquez said, her expression grim. I'm afraid I have some bad news. There's been an incident at your apartment. Someone broke in. They ransacked the place. I felt the blood drain from my face. Was anyone hurt? I was the only one staying there and no one was inside, she assured me. But the apartment is a mess. We need you to come with us to take a look and see if anything was taken. I nodded numbly, my mind spinning. Alexander had escalated. He wasn't just threatening me anymore. He was taking action. James drove me to my apartment. The door was ajar, and the scene inside was chaos. Drawers had been pulled out, their contents scattered across the floor. Cushions had been slashed. Books had been torn from their shelves. It was destruction for the sake of destruction. But as I walked through the wreckage, I realized something. Nothing was missing. My jewelry, my laptop, my wallet, they were all there, untouched. He wasn't looking for money, I said slowly. He was looking for something else. Detective Marquez looked at me sharply. What kind of something else? I thought back to Penelope's warning. Alexander had said he was going to frame me for embezzlement. He needed evidence. He needed documents that would make it look like I was guilty. His access was cut off, I said, the pieces clicking into place. He couldn't get into the Foundation's records. So he came here, thinking I might have kept copies at home. Did you? Detective Marquez asked. No, I said. Everything is digital, and it's all encrypted. He wouldn't have found anything. But I knew, with a sinking certainty, that this was just the beginning. Alexander wasn't going to stop. He was going to keep pushing, keep trying, until he found a way to bring me down. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. James was asleep beside me, his arm draped across my waist. The warmth of his presence was a comfort, but it couldn't silence the dark thoughts swirling in my mind that I had come so far. I had rebuilt my life, piece by piece, from the ashes of the old one. I had found purpose, love, and a sense of peace I'd never thought possible. And now it was all under threat. But I wasn't the same woman who had died in that crash. I wasn't the same woman who had let Alexander control her. I had fought for my life, and I wasn't going to stop fighting now. I reached for my phone and typed a message to Frank that we need to accelerate the plan. I need to know where Alexander is. Now that the reply came within minutes that I'm on it. Stay safe. I put down the phone and closed my eyes. Tomorrow, I would start the next phase of my fight. Tomorrow, I would find Alexander and end this once and for all. But tonight, I let myself rest. Tonight, I let myself believe that everything was going to be okay. Frank called me at 7 the next morning. His voice was rough, like he hadn't slept. I found him. He's been staying at a motel on the outskirts of the city. A place called the Sunset Inn. It's the kind of place where people go when they don't want to be found. I sat up in bed, my heart racing. What's he doing there? He's been lying low. Paying in cash. He's got a burner phone, but he's been using it to call Penelope and a few other numbers I'm trying to trace. Frank paused. There's something else. He's been making trips to a storage facility on the south side. I haven't been able to figure out what he's storing there yet. Then we need to find out, I said. And we need to do it fast. James stirred beside me, his eyes fluttering open. What's going on? He asked, his voice thick with sleep. That I covered the phone. Frank found Alexander. I need to go meet him. James sat up immediately, his expression sharpening. I'm coming with you. You don't have to. Yes, I do, he said firmly. I'm not letting you face him alone. That's not negotiable. I looked at him, at the determination in his eyes, and I knew there was no point arguing. Okay, I said. Get dressed. An hour later, Frank was waiting for us in his car outside a diner near the motel. He looked rumpled and tired, but his eyes were alert. That he hasn't left his room since last night, Frank said, pointing toward the motel. The parking lot is empty except for his car. He's probably sleeping. Or hiding. What's the plan? I asked. I'm going to get access to that storage unit, Frank said. I've got a contact who works at the facility. He owes me a favor. If Alexander has something in there that's incriminating, we need to find it before he decides to use it. James leaned forward from the back seat. And if he's planning to use whatever's in there against Amelia, what if it's a weapon? Frank's jaw tightened. Then we call the police and have them raid the unit. But I want to see what's in there first. If we can document everything, we'll have more leverage. We drove to the storage facility in silence. It was a sprawling complex of metal garages, each one secured with a padlock. Frank's contact was waiting for us near the entrance, a heavy-set man with a friendly face and wary eyes. "This is the last time I do you a favor, Frank," he said as he handed over a set of keys. "I could lose my job for this." "You won't lose anything," Frank assured him. "I just need 10 minutes." The contact led us to Alexander's unit. It was a small one, tucked away in the back corner of the facility. The padlock was old and rusted, and I watched as Frank fumbled with the keys. "Why didn't he use a better lock?" James asked quietly. "Because he didn't expect anyone to find this place," Frank replied, swinging open the door. The unit was dark, lit only by the faint glow of the morning sun filtering through the cracks. I stepped inside, my eyes adjusting to the dim light. At first, I couldn't make sense of what I was seeing. Then the shapes began to resolve. Boxes. Dozens of them. All labeled in Alexander's neat, precise handwriting. I pulled one down and opened it. Inside were photographs. Photographs of me. There were photos of me at the foundation, leaving my apartment, walking with James. There were photos of me at the grocery store, at the gym, at the coffee shop. There were even photos of me inside my apartment, taken through the window. A cold shiver ran down my spine. "Amelia," James said, his voice tight. "Look at this." He was holding up a map of the city, marked with red pins. Each pin corresponded to a location I frequented. My apartment. The foundation. The safe house. The coffee shop where James and I had our dates. The art gallery where I'd first met him. He was tracking me. He had been tracking me for weeks. "He's been watching me," I whispered. "All this time." Frank moved to the back of the unit, where a large wooden crate sat against the wall. He pried it open with a crowbar, and the contents made my blood run cold. Inside were files. Financial records. Bank statements. Emails. Everything Alexander would need to frame me for embezzlement. The documents had been carefully organized, each one labeled with a sticky note indicating how it would be used. "He was planning to plant all of this," Frank said, shaking his head. "He was going to make it look like you've been funneling money from the foundation into your personal accounts." I felt a wave of nausea. He would have destroyed everything. The foundation, my reputation, everything I've worked for. "Not anymore," James said, his hand finding mine. "We have proof now." Frank closed the crate. "I'll take photos of everything and document it. Then we call the police. With this evidence, he's not just a stalker anymore. He's a criminal." We left the storage facility and drove straight to the police station. Detective Marquez was waiting for us, and she listened as we laid out everything we'd found. "This is significant," she said, flipping through the photos Frank had taken. "We have enough to get a search warrant for the storage unit and to bring him in for questioning. But I'm going to be honest with you, the evidence is circumstantial. He could argue that someone else planted those documents. We need something more concrete." "What about the photos?" I asked. "He's been stalking me." "That's not circumstantial. He'll say he was just concerned about you," Detective Marquez said. "That he hired a private investigator to keep tabs on you because he was worried. It's a weak defense, but it could muddy the waters." I felt my hope falter. "So what do? We bring him in," she said. "We apply pressure. And we hope he makes a mistake." The next few days were a waiting game. Alexander was picked up for questioning, but he was released after a few hours. He'd lawyered up, a slick corporate attorney named Richard Tanner, and he was refusing to cooperate. "Mr. Hale maintains that he's been set up," Tanner said in a statement to the press. "These baseless accusations are a desperate attempt to destroy his reputation. He has done nothing wrong." The media ate it up. The story was everywhere: the fallen CEO, the jilted fiancé, the bitter battle between two former lovers. I was painted as the vengeful woman who couldn't let go. It was a nightmare. But I wasn't going to let the media narrative define me. I gave a press conference of my own, standing in front of the Foundation's building with James and Chloe at my side. The accusations being made against me are false, I said, my voice steady. I have not embezzled funds from my own foundation. I have not committed any crime. The evidence that has been presented is a fabrication, created by a man who has been stalking and threatening me for months. I held up a copy of the restraining order. This is a document signed by a judge, affirming that Alexander Hale is a threat to my safety. The police are investigating him for breaking and entering, for unlawful surveillance, and for witness tampering. I trust that the justice system will prevail. The cameras flashed, and I walked away, my heart pounding. It was a bold move, and I knew it would make Alexander angrier. But I was done hiding. I was done letting him control the narrative. That night, James and I sat on my balcony, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. That you were incredible today, he said. The way you stood up there, facing the cameras. I've never seen anyone so brave. I wasn't brave, I said, shaking my head. I was terrified. But I couldn't let him win. I couldn't let him take this away from me. And he won't, James said. We're going to get through this. Together. I leaned into him, feeling the warmth of his body against mine. For a moment, the fear and uncertainty faded, replaced by a sense of peace. I had come so far, fought so hard, and I wasn't going to let Alexander undo all of it. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. I was at the Foundation, reviewing the final details of a new fundraising campaign, when Maya burst into my office. Amelia, there's someone here to see you. He's insisting on speaking with you in person. Who is it? I asked, already knowing the answer. Alexander, she said, her voice trembling. He's in the lobby. He's demanding to see you. I felt my heart stop. The restraining order was still in effect. If he was here, he was violating it. I called Detective Marquez and then walked to the lobby, my heart pounding in my chest. He was standing in the middle of the room, his hands in his pockets, looking as composed and confident as ever. He was wearing a tailored suit, his hair perfectly styled, his expression cool and collected. He looked like a man who had nothing to lose. Amelia, he said, a smile spreading across his face. I was hoping I'd catch you. Alexander, you're not supposed to be here, I said, my voice cold. You're violating a restraining order. I don't care about the restraining order, he said, his smile fading. I'm here to talk to you. I'm here to tell you the truth. The truth, I laughed, a bitter sound. You don't know the meaning of the word. Everything I did for you, he said, taking a step toward me. I was trying to protect you. From yourself. From the people who would use you. From all the people who wanted to tear us apart. Protect me, I repeated, incredulous. You had me followed. You broke into my apartment. You planned to frame me for a crime I didn't commit. How is that protecting me? He shook his head, his eyes wild. You don't understand. You don't see what I see. The world is full of people who want to destroy you. I was just trying to keep you safe. Alexander, this is insane, I said. You need help. Real help. I don't need help, he snapped. I need you. I need you to come back to me. To stop this foolishness. You know we were meant to be together. You know there's no one else for me. I stared at him, and for the first time, I saw the truth. He wasn't just a narcissist. He wasn't just a manipulator. He was broken. He had lost everything, and he had nothing left to cling to except the fantasy that he could control me. Alexander, I said softly. I'm not coming back. I'm not the person you think I am. And I'm not the person you want me to be. His face twisted with fury. You'll regret this, Amelia. You'll see. When everyone turns against you, when you have nothing left, you'll come crawling back to me. The doors to the lobby swung open, and Detective Marquez walked in, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. "Alexander Hale, you're under arrest for violation of a restraining order." Alexander's expression shifted from fury to shock, and then to a cold, bitter resignation. He raised his hands as the officers moved to cuff him. "You'll regret this," he said again, his eyes fixed on mine. "You'll regret everything." And then he was gone, led out of the building in handcuffs. I stood in the empty lobby, my heart pounding, my hands trembling. It was over. Finally, it was over. But even as the relief washed over me, I knew the battle wasn't fully won. The scars Alexander had left would take a long time to heal. But I had survived. I had rebuilt my life, piece by piece, and I had come out stronger on the other side. James was waiting for me at home that evening. He wrapped his arms around me and held me tight. "It's over," he said softly. "He's gone." I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "It's over." I looked out the window at the city lights, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I let myself believe that the future was bright. I was free. I was loved. And I was finally, truly, ready to live.